Julia Stege, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks, Rich.
Excellent.
Thanks for
Uh,
having me come and
Absolutely. I appreciate you
talk
coming
on your
on.
podcast
Yeah.
today.
I uh, I think your story will speak to a lot of people in the creative community. So I definitely
Well,
appreciate you
I
coming on.
hope so. I like your topic and, I like your purpose. And I
Thank you.
think there's a lot of people out there who actually are artists, but have been so crushed and dissuaded
Yeah.
from such a young age. Whether they're visual artist or performing artist or at heart.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let me give the audience a brief introduction here for you,
Okay,
so
great.
they just get an understanding of who you are and some of the things that you've done over the years.
Okie doke.
You're a trailblazing digital designer and early tech adopter, one of the earliest professional graphic designers to work with computer graphics in the mid 1980s, and began designing websites as early as 1997, well ahead of most peers. You're an acclaimed branding artist with renowned clients. You founded Graphic Girls in 1995 and created branding, logo, social media campaigns for high profile clients, including the Museum of Modern Art, Carnegie Hall, Burger King, Canards, Cafe Gratitude, Julia Butterfly Hill, Birkenstock Shoes, Spencer Energy, and Ilyana Van Zant as
Yeah.
well. You're the creator of a new paradigm, a strategic attraction and magical marketing. Since earning certifications in strategic attraction coaching in 2006, you've infused your design work with the law of attraction. In 2011, you launched the Magical Marketing brand, driven by core principles of attraction, authenticity, intuition, transformation, freedom, and fulfillment. You support thousands of soul driven entrepreneurs through the magical marketing. You've guided thousands out of the box creatives, healers, mystics, coaches, consultants, and change makers to authentically attract their soul tribe online. You have a dual degree in art and media with deep creative roots, where you earned your BFA in visual communication, specifically around graphic design, and an MFA in media studies with early immersion in art, astrology, and community building. Quite a long career, and
That's what happens when you're old.
but you've shifted it into what I'm seeing just from the intro here, and what little bit of that I know about our interactions previous is that it's more heart centered.
Yeah. So I've always been, I was started in Manhattan as a graphic designer. I mean, I went to college for graphic design. I had this whole plan. I was going to go to New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
But I didn't last long in New York, in Manhattan specifically, because of all the, what I say, brainwashing, hyping, and lying. And, I was a kind of a hippie, like a late hippie.
Okay.
I was into the Grateful Dead, I was dated a guy that played in a Dead cover band, and my friends were all supposedly Deadheads, basically. But once we got into Manhattan, they changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they started, like, the conversations changed. And suddenly it's, oh, my office is on the 32nd floor, and the cab I took to get here was $42, or,
Yeah.
and um and I kept getting fired. And it wasn't because my clients didn't like me. It's because my bosses were threatened by me or they messed up. Like my first boss was my college professor. So he was my graphic design professor. I was his
Mm,
favorite student. And I do remember at one point, like I was getting $12,000 a year at this job.
okay.
You're supposed to live on that even in 1982. And I found out that I won him a project I did a design for an annual report that he got $12,000 for. And it took me 2 weeks to do it.
Mm,
And I was like, whoa. That was when I started understanding how capitalism works.
right, for sure. For sure.
But they understand this, okay? You
Yeah,
know, they understand that they are underpaying you by radically,
yeah,
and that they ought to be on their guard.
yeah.
That first one, he became a coke addict and he lost his main client. That's where we had the Burger King and the banks and stuff like that.
Let's back up just a little bit further. Um,
Further, okay.
yeah, let's go back just a little bit further. And let me start out with my only structured question.
Oh, okay.
And it is, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Julia?
Uh, I was born in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but my mother hated it there.
Really? Okay.
And so my dad got a job in Manhattan, and we moved to Riverside, Connecticut,
All right.
which it was a beautiful place. Okay, it was on the water on the Long Island Sound, but it was problematic for me.
Okay.
I had two older brothers. My oldest brother was, I mean, I think my father just was a rageaholic, okay?
All
And
right.
he took it out on my oldest brother, and I think it warped him.
Yeah.
And so he was bullying me and my other brother. I had two older brothers, right?
Yeah.
So my eldest brother was bullying the other one and me from a
Uh-huh.
very young, so I was being bullied from age 4,
Wow.
and that's like threatening to punch you or punching you. Never enough to bruise. So it's more like bullying than really physical, like harm.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was always on edge. My dad is there yelling, my mom's crying, and my other brother's punching us and bullying us and bossing us around. And, so that was kind of the scene.
Yeah.
And lovely house in Connecticut where everyone's insane. And I like to say I was born with a magenta crayon in my hand.
All right.
My favorite of all the crayons was the magenta one. I was always running out of the magenta crayon.
Yeah.
And remember the Crayola box with like 200 crayons in it, and it had this pencil sharpener. Now, this is back in the early 60s when they added that pencil
Yeah.
sharpener. And so I was coloring all the time. My earliest memories, I did a logo, like I guess it was a self-portrait,
Okay.
but my arms were coming out of my head.
All right.
And my brothers would tease me and I'm like, your arms don't come out of your head. And I'm like, yeah, they do. So
Right.
there was that.
Yeah.
And I also remember coloring at my friend's house next door and her sister coming out and going, you can't make Jimmy Olsen's hair green. And I'm like, I can't? Like, I just did.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't? So there's always this, you can't do that. You're doing that wrong, that kind of thing. That's what artists get. That's what we get.
Yeah.
Somebody's always got an opinion.
Right.
It was so funny. I did a snowman drawing, but I was like 5. I did a snowman drawing for my grandmother, and she put it on her piano. She framed it. She loved it. And she was a landscape architect, so she was an artist in her own right,
Okay.
an artist of the land, let's say. And
Yes.
she said that she thought the most funniest thing, her friend came over and said, ugh, modern art. Looking at she's like, my 5-year-old granddaughter did that.
Yeah.
So, everyone has an opinion. But I was really into drawing. And also by the time I could write, I was really into creative writing too and poetry and stuff like that.
Okay.
So all of that, creative stuff. My father's side of the family, they were pretty creative. My grandmother was that landscape architect. My dad was kind of a cartoonist. He just didn't decide to do that for his career. He was a salesman.
Oh,
Um,
really? Interesting.
but yeah, he was a writer. He wanted to be a novelist, but he kind of gave up on it.
Okay.
I think early, okay? And my aunt, though, she was a painter and also a clothing designer, and she had gone to Parsons School of Design when she was like
Oh, cool.
17 or something. She was like
Yeah.
pretty precocious. But she had gotten pregnant and got married young, so she was always whispering in my ear, like, you should be an artist and you should go to art school. So,
Okay.
and my father had started a business when I was about 10, and he had a graphic designer that turned out was my best friend's father.
Okay.
So he took me to that studio when I was about 13 and said, you could do this. And they had all these posters. So this is like in the early 70s. The posters were very groovy. And he was like, you could do that for a living. So I think there was a lot of encouragement in some regard, but it was contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by the time I was in high school, I was I kept applying to the Art Honor Society, this thing, Art Honors, you had to apply, show them your work, and they rejected me. So they rejected me all 3 years of high school. And I was just like, what the hey,
Yeah.
what? And then, so there was like people would say, "Oh, you're a really good artist," and then I would get rejected. That was just my entire life, okay? And but I don't think I'm unique in that regard. I
Yeah.
think
It's the
that artists
paradox
are
itself.
just discouraged. And
Yeah.
I applied to go to Syracuse University to go to their art school.
Okay.
And my mom had found that place. She's like, "I think you'd like this place." It was the only place I really liked. So it was the only place I applied, and they rejected me from the art school.
Mm.
And I was like, what the hell? What's going on here? But they accepted me in liberal arts. And so my counselor said, you should go and then reapply from within. So that was stressful. I went and I reapplied. I took all the art classes I could that were transferable. And I reapplied, and the guy was like, I don't know why they didn't let you in to begin with. I was like, okay, that was only 8 months of torture or whatever it was of my life, not
Yeah.
knowing. And so I went to art school. And then things happened like I took a painting class, and the guy my friend had recommended, and he said, oh, you're Gretchen's friend, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, she's a good painter. And he's like, so, graphic design major, huh? And I said, yeah. And he said, that explains it. On the first day of class, in a painting class, and he's like, you should probably put those paintbrushes down. I'm like, I'm not gonna put what are you talking about? Day one?
Yeah.
But I was such a rebel type. My brothers were beating me up, right, when I was a little girl, so I'm not gonna take your shit.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I was. And I just plowed through
Right.
all
Right.
of that kind of shit.
Was elementary school kind of a place for you to escape some of that
God, no.
as a girl?
I went to private school. I went to a place called Greenwich Country Day School
Okay.
in Greenwich, Connecticut. And the kids were like these bratty rich kids. And there was some like my second grade teacher loved me and wanted to put me on the Christmas tree and told my mom how great I was. But the kids were nasty. And the way it worked was the teachers would call you by your last name. So you're not ever being called by your first name. And
Right.
it's so there's this like Steggy, da da da, and it's just it doesn't feel at all like an escape. And the boys, if they called you by your first name, everyone would go, ooh, so you couldn't, even the students weren't calling you by your name. And no, it was in many ways a nightmare, private school.
Okay.
But they did have art classes. So, and we had a printing class. We learned printmaking, like with
Okay.
those old machines and
Yeah. Yeah.
letterpress and all this stuff. And we had a
Yeah.
woodworking class. We learned how to make things in wood, and we made jewelry even, and
Okay.
using flame and stuff. And we are like
Right.
kids, but we learned all that stuff. And so the it's again contradictory, right? So you're suffering, but you're learning great stuff.
Did you get any encouragement from those creative teachers at that point in time? Or was it still the same thing that early on as well?
I think it was always contradictory.
Okay.
I don't remember that well. I remember doing things. I remember at one point I had my little best friend whose father was the graphic designer. She
Yeah.
was not a very talented artist. And, we were like 9 or something like that. And I
Yeah.
remember we were drawing. So it wasn't just coloring. We were drawing, and I drew a house. The house I drew had holes in the roof. I don't know what, I had a thing about houses with holes. I don't know. And she was just copying me.
Okay.
And I was like, why are you copying exactly what I'm doing? She was just in awe with me, I think. And she
Uh-huh.
wanted to be as good as I was. And she said I was good. And so other kids might somehow tell, or my brothers, or, they would put my parents, they would put drawings I did up, or like my grandmothers did.
Hmm.
But they also were correcting me or saying you can't do that at the same time. So I don't have any like really good memories of being encouraged as an artist, even though I'm sure I liked art class. It was
Okay.
just kind of, you're going to do this. And no, it wasn't like, I certainly wasn't the best. I wasn't the best artist by
Okay.
far. There was always somebody that was like, I remember the second grade, there was this girl, Sarah Morton, who drew this bunny that was like really realistic. And you can't, even if you're a good teacher, my teacher in second grade was great,
Uh-huh.
you can't resist saying how amazing that is. That is so amazing. Look at Sarah's bunny. Sarah's bunny is just better than everyone else's bunny. It's by far.
Yeah.
And you look at your bunny and you're like, my bunny is nowhere near as good as that. I know it. I know it's not. I would like it to be better, but it's not. And then later on, there was this guy, Carl Walker, who could draw cartoons like you wouldn't believe, or like at 12, 13 years old, and he's drawing cartoons as well as an adult.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and you say, I'm not as good as that. So could it have been me? I was just had that head full of doubt. Maybe it was just me. And if I went back and listened to what people actually said, it might be different than my recollection, you know.
Right. Right.
But I was really hard. I wanted to be a lot better than I was still to this day. And
Sure.
there's certain things I think I'm the best, like graphic design. It's hard to find a better graphic designer than I am. I did find one that was like really good that I can hire to do stuff for me. But that's like one out of how many years of looking. I just,
Sure.
I might have a diva-esque attitude in that regard. But in terms of being able to draw, there are certain individuals that can draw Like they can really draw. Like you can draw actually.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just a thing.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure. When did you have any athletic inclinations at all? No.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And, in my school, if you weren't athletic, you were, you were a dork. No.
Okay.
In the ninth grade, you're supposed to be on the first team for softball, say.
Yeah.
Me and a couple of friends of mine, we were on the third team, I think.
All right.
Which means that we were with seventh graders or something like that. And
Gotcha.
I remember they were taking the team photos, and we tried to hide out in the gym, and they went and got us. They wouldn't let us hide out. We wanted, like, let's not be in the photo. We were just so embarrassed.
Right.
But,
Right.
they did let us play. And I was a reasonably good first base person. I could always catch the thing, but they didn't let me into the first team. So yeah, not sportsy.
Okay. How about music at that time? You mentioned you're kind of a deadhead, but were there any
Well,
other
now
musical
before I was a
influences?
Jethead, okay, I
Yeah.
was a Beatles fanatic, but when in junior high, still in private school, still at Greenwich Country Day,
Okay.
I was taking piano lessons, and I wouldn't play anything I didn't want to play. So I would have the teacher play things until she found a song I was willing to learn, and then I would learn that song.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to read music ish, but I had to hear it first.
All right.
And then I would remember it, and then I could read it from that. And I remember in the ninth grade, so we had these recitals, and the whole school would be there. That was that. I mean, that's like hundreds of people and their parents and everything. And in the ninth grade, I was learning the Blue Danube. It's a long song, and
Yeah.
it's taking me all year. The whole thing. And I wasn't ready to play that in front of hundreds of people. And I told the guy that was the music department head piano guy. I said, I'm not gonna play. And he's like, you have to play. And I'm like, I'm not gonna play. I'm not ready. You'll just have to play, he said. I'm like, no, not. And we had this argument. So that's me being
Yeah.
insolent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I did not go to the recital, and somebody told me they called out my name, that asshole. Julia Stege, Julia Stege, and they did that. That was
Yeah.
just rude. I told them I wasn't going to be there. So that kind of thing. But I wasn't that good either. It wasn't like I wasn't bad, but I wasn't that good at piano,
Mm-hmm.
really. I couldn't improvise or anything like that. I couldn't play rock music. I was playing only standard classical, you know. The really sad thing is the singing thing,
Okay.
because I was a good singer. Now, I went through some weird phases, like where I spoke in opera, and everyone was very annoyed with me. I was probably about 11, like,
Okay.
no, I don't want to go to the store. I don't know why I was doing that, but everyone was annoyed by that, except for there was this babysitter that I had, and she said, Julie really sings well. And she said this to my mother, and my mother's like, that opera thing is really annoying, or something like that. And my mom
Mm-hmm.
had been a singer in college and junior high. Or high school and college, she got leads in plays and stuff.
Okay.
And she's like, I was a great singer until I started smoking. and then I ruined my voice. But that was her story, right? I was
Yeah.
a really good singer. You sing flat. Now, it wasn't exactly like that, but that's how I recall it. And it wasn't until uh, my 30s that I started taking singing lessons. I didn't even know you could take singing lessons. And that I think
Interesting.
is a really sad thing. I didn't even know there was such a thing
Yeah, especially at a
as
prep school.
singing lessons. I mean, we had choruses and I was given parts and that in plays, but not lead. But that was because I didn't go for the lead. I could have at one point, the guy, Mr. Severance, so I remember certain things. He said, I came just to like see what was going on. They were having tryouts. And he said, could somebody read for the other person? So do the other part for the person that was trying out.
Yeah.
And so I read, but I wasn't really trying out. And I didn't come back. So I
Okay.
didn't ever try out. And he goes, why didn't you come back? Why didn't you try out? You could have gotten a lead. And so I guess he thought that I was a really good actor.
Okay.
But I had all these views about actors for some reason, especially in high school. Like, oh, they're so full of themselves or something like that. In college, oh my God, the actors in college, I was like, oh God, keep me away from those people.
Yeah.
And I just think that I blew it because I mean, late 50s, I met somebody who was doing something called Music to My Ears, and they had a lot of kids in plays, but their parents wanted to be in plays, so she started doing plays for adults, musicals. And she said, you should try out. And I didn't, and then I did, and I started getting these leads.
Huh.
And I got any part I wanted almost to the last. I didn't get the part I wanted in the end, but I got to play a lot of male roles because no men were applying for them. But I got to play the captain from The Sound of Music, and I got to play the revolutionary leader in Les Miserables, Enjolras, the red, the blood of angry men. And
Yeah.
I got to play Glinda, the Good Witch of the South in The Wiz. And I got to play Teen Angel in Grease. So this was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I really wish I would have figured this out in the seventh grade.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to me because you had said that you didn't have any words of encouragement that you were feeling coming from any, but this Mr. Severance um,
Yeah,
did see something in
he
you.
did, and I blew it.
Do you if you can remember how he was in terms of personality type? Did he seem to be a kind man, somebody
He
that
was a
you could
kind
speak
man. He was
with?
a scholar. I think he taught English.
Okay.
I'm, my memory is not that great about it. I might have been in one of his English classes. I don't know.
Okay.
But later on, but he was a nice guy, like a scholar type, corduroy jacket kind of
Yeah.
guy with the patches. I don't know if he had patches on his,
Okay.
but no, he was, let's say, contrast to the guy who was the piano teacher guy.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. That I'm already fascinated by this guy because of all the people that are around you who are creating this lack of confidence and also creating this rebel within who is just going to go against anything that you feel is right for you as an individual. You
Right.
have this
I'm going to
sense,
go against the norm to do what I
yeah, you have
feel
this
like.
sense of
Yeah.
individuality as a younger girl that needed to go her own way.
Well, there was him. There was also this guy named Mr. Maris. And Mr. Maris was an English teacher. I'm pretty sure he was very encouraging. He was a
Okay.
Quaker.
Okay. Different mindset,
And
different way of thinking.
he was an older guy, pretty old guy, probably 70 something. And this is in like the eighth, ninth grade, seventh, eighth, ninth grade, right?
Uh-huh.
He was the leader or the teacher for the art and literary magazine. So
Okay.
I got into that art and literary magazine every year from when I was 8 or even earlier. So my poetry got in, my drawings got in.
Okay.
And I had this dream, like I want to be on the staff. And you had to be in the ninth grade to be on the staff, and you had one chance.
Uh-huh.
And so I applied to be on the staff, and I remember that day because I had the biggest migraine. I had never had a migraine before, and here I am, like 14, 15 maybe years old, and I couldn't read the list. So I had to put my face up against the list of who got in. And I was having tunnel vision and everything.
Okay.
And there I was on the list. And so I got to be on the staff.
Nice.
And then I had to go I had to go to the nurse's office because I was throwing up and I had to go home, just from such stress.
Yeah.
But Mr. Maris accepted me and I don't remember what it was like to be on the staff. I only just remember that one wanting to be on the staff so badly. But yeah, we looked at all the art and I got into it, all the writing and stuff. And I kept doing that through high school too,
Okay.
with a thing called the other paper, which we accepted poetry and drawing and stuff. And we put together a paper. It was not the official preppy paper.
Sure.
We made it up. I was really into, I did that in college too, putting out papers. I did it like I was supposed to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
So
being
did
trained how to do magazines, so I did a lot of magazine design. I've done a lot of magazine design.
yeah. Was your friend's father, the graphic designer, and Mr. Maris, was he probably the two most influential in you moving into graphic design as you're exiting
No,
high
my
school?
father was the influence to get me into graph, and my aunt, like whispering in my ear.
Okay.
For some reason, my friend's father, Mr. Arnold, I think he quit and he did this thing where he made ducks out of wood. I mean, like really realistic looking ducks.
Yeah.
And his wife was an heiress. So she inherited millions of dollars or something like that. And so I think he didn't have to work anymore. He had a partner, and I don't remember the guy's name. That guy I took on as my mentor. So I interviewed him when I was in college about his job and stuff like that. But I was already in college by then. So I had just seen their office that time, and that was enough. And my aunt whispering in my ear, and my grandma being encouraging, basically, and dad saying, you could do that. You could do that. But I didn't need much outside encouragement. I was internally driven. But I have a whole thing where I actually wanted to be an artist, a writer, and a counselor.
Okay.
I wanted to do all those things. And they told me, no, you have to choose one. And so I chose the artist one. But that's more of like my Renaissance nature that I
Yeah.
bring out now.
Which college did you go to?
Syracuse University first.
Okay.
And then I went to Manhattan to be a graphic designer, like I said, and I kept getting fired. That's a whole other story, where my clients liked me, but my boss is like, I gotta fire you. And I left Manhattan, I was only 25.
Right, but let's back up just a bit here because you got a BFA and an MFA.
Yeah, the
So,
MFA came later.
okay. But the BFA, was that from
That's I'm from
Syracuse?
Syracuse in graphic design. I took photography as well. I did a lot of photography and like groovy photography, like multimedia. Like we were doing projecting photograph. So black, let's say a black and white photograph, projecting that photograph, so high contrast onto like a see-through acetate,
Yeah.
and then taking Dr. Martin's dyes and painting the photograph and then making prints from that.
Okay.
So that was fun. That was really creative. And then doing graphic design with those prints, that was also cool. I was learning how to draw. We did like figure drawing,
Okay.
and that the figure drawing teachers were really trying to teach us how to draw. I
Yeah.
don't remember them that well, but I do remember them being very conscientiously trying to teach us like this is what a hand looks like, and I
Right.
was doing pretty well with the figure drawing. That's why I had a bit of a foundation when I took that painting class to tell that guy, I'm going to do what I want to do. You can't stop me. He
Sure.
had a horrible impact on me though, that painting teacher,
Yeah. Yeah.
because, it took me 40 years before I realized that I could paint. And even while I was starting painting, which is about 8 years ago, I had this like, you don't know what you're doing loop in my head. And
Hmm.
I did a trance therapy session. It's a whole interesting story. I'll tell you later if you want to hear it, but where I understood that this guy was the source of that.
Okay. Okay. How was student life in college for you?
Well, at first it was a nightmare, okay, because I had a boyfriend finally. It took me forever to get a boyfriend.
Okay.
But my senior year, the last few months of my senior year in high school, I had a boyfriend. And um, then I had to leave him. And that just broke my heart. And I wasn't doing it all well. I was crying all the time. Plus, I wasn't in the art school yet.
Right.
So it was
Right.
like torture.
Yeah.
But there were other students there who were in the art school. And they were like, and I had some of my art up in my room. You're better than most of the people in our class, this one girl said.
Uh-huh.
Why didn't you get in? You're better than the other students who are in. And I think it was because I applied in New York, in Manhattan, instead of coming up to Syracuse.
Gotcha.
So there was some guy with a stick up his butt that was the one that was reviewing our portfolios in New York.
Right.
But
Was your, I
but
was
they
gonna say,
I was just saying, like you were saying about the students there,
yeah. What was
they were
student
into
life?
getting drunk. I was really not into that. My grandmother was an alcoholic. My parents were like, don't drink because we have it in our blood, kind of thing. And so none of my brothers nor I ever drank. We smoked weed though, but
Okay.
we didn't drink. And I was just like, ew, don't drink and vomit. I don't care about your partying, get away from me kind of thing. So there was a lot of that kind of drunken partying at that school. And it took me quite a while before I found my tribe there. Like at least a year
All
of,
right. When you did find your tribe, what was that feeling within yourself of maybe feeling a group of acceptance or a sense of I can finally breathe
yeah.
around people?
Well, there was one thing was you had to get into the art school and then you had to get into your major. And that all happened within the first year.
Okay.
So I got into my major. There was a definite sense of relief because only 20 people were going to get in to the graphic design major.
Okay.
And then my boyfriend and another friend from high school came up the following year. So he was there. So that was a huge relief.
Okay.
And then he was in a Grateful Dead band. Those two were in a band together. And so then they were attracting deadheads. And I always got along with deadheads.
All right.
They're, hippies.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I had this whole deadhead crew. But I also, at the same time, there was it the same time or was it the next year? So there were these girls, let's call them girls, that were a year older than me. And they let me use the studio space that I wasn't supposed to have.
Okay.
And but this one girl wasn't using her studio space. So I was hanging out with these older design majors.
Okay.
And I had the deadheads. So I was definitely started getting full of myself by then because it was obvious that I was actually one of the best graphic designers in the school. And so how I had been rejected all those years was a mystery, but it stopped mattering. And then I became everyone's favorite, except for like this one lady who she was like, "Oh, this is such a great design. Who did this? Did you do this, Mark?" And Mark's like, "No. No, did you do this, Jane?" No, no. And then it comes around to I did it, and she's like, "Ow." She hated me for some reason. But her husband was also a teacher, loved me, loved everything I did. All of them, they all thought I was the best. So that changed me. Having teachers that actually thought I was the best, that painting teacher notwithstanding. But this is the best at graphic design,
Right.
not at illustration, not at painting. There's a distinction there. There were illustration majors who were mind-blowing,
Yeah.
but that wasn't me.
Gotcha. How did your boyfriend feel about your creative talents?
I don't really know. The only thing I remember him saying one time, and I mean, we were together for 3.5 years. He said, if I could sing like you, I would be in a band. And he was in a band, but he didn't want me in his band, or he didn't like try to get me into his band.
Okay.
And the girls that were singing in his band, I thought they were just much better singers than I.
You thought they were much better, and he thought you were much better.
I don't know if he thought I was better than them, but he thought I was good enough to be in a band. But I was like,
Interesting.
no, I sing flat, and then because that's what my mother had told me. I think that if I had just taken a little bit of vocal instruction,
Yeah.
I could have done it. And, we used to sing. I had a friend that was trying to teach me how to sing when we were we were high school kids. She taught
Hmm.
me how to sing the harmonies on Beatles songs. And one of my best friends, we did a lot of Neil Young singing in the stairwell, and she was good. She'd play guitar and sing. And very recently, I did a concert like a few years ago on Facebook. And she said, she wrote on there, I knew you could do that. And we had had a couple of conversations, and she was like, I knew that if you took vocal lessons, you would be good. But I didn't understand that until, as like I said, almost 40 years old.
Yeah.
But the boyfriend, I just want to say he was a wimp. I don't know how else to say it, but he was not very, he would not be at all contradictory to anything. He was a go-alonger.
Okay. So
And so,
what was the attraction then?
fuck. I was 18 years old and I had never even gone on a date really, and
Okay.
he liked me.
All right.
He was sweet. He was very sweet. He did anything for me. He came up to my school for Christ's sake. There's just a funny picture of him and his band because he was a year behind me in high school. And I gave him a picture of me on a t-shirt and it's like me going like this or something, this crazy shirt. And there's a picture of him with his band wearing that shirt. Like I am nowhere to be found. I'm up at college and he's wearing this shirt. And it got on Facebook just a few years ago. And the other friendship that was in the same school with us, who was in high school too, he said,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, look at the," he goes, "Look at the shirt." And I said, "I know, like, that's funny. Does Janie know he had does Janie see that picture? Because his wife, like we were not at all friends in high school. He ended up marrying the cheerleader. Anyway, and she hated me with a passion. And he said something like, "Oh yeah, no, they have that up on their mantle." I'm like, "Yeah, right." But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we couldn't make it past 3.5 years.
Okay.
You kind of look back and something like that, and you think that guy was a nice guy, but why did we break up? Well, he just couldn't stand up to me. He couldn't say anything to me.
Did you have a sense as a little girl that you could feel things more so than probably most everyone around you?
I When I was 4, we were gonna move into this new house my father was building.
Okay.
We rented a house where the guy had died, and he had an office in the attic. And I used to hang out up there. And my brother said, there's a ghost in the attic. It's the ghost of Mr. whatever his name was. And I'm like, well, I don't care because he's a nice ghost. And so there was that. I knew I was psychic,
Okay.
but when did I know it? I mean, I was into astrology as a really young kid, like
Okay.
4. There was this astrology thing that would come on right before Superman or something like that.
All right.
And I'm a Pisces, so you have to go through all the whole zodiac to get to the Pisces reading. And my brothers were Taurus and Leo, so
Mm.
thing was up.
That
And I
says a
and they
lot
were
right there.
I was like, you could shh, shh. And I'm
Yeah.
4, and they're like 7 and 9 or something like that. And I'm telling them to shut up because Pisces is going to come on. Definitely when I was in high school, I knew I was psychic.
Okay.
And I was also trying to read people. And I could read people. And also, even as a teenager, there was a couple of adults that I knew, like from work, that were adults sometimes would ask me for advice, which that's weird. I was just a kid, really. But later, my dad said something to my mom, like really much later. I was in my 30s or something, 40s even. Julia is wise. And my mom said, well, she's always been wise. You just didn't know it because you didn't talk to her about anything but what you
Right.
wanted to talk about. Like, I've always been wise. Is that what you think? I guess so.
Yeah.
But like, I started taking LSD when I was like 17. I went through a
Okay.
thing, deadheads and all that. And when I was on LSD, I could absolutely read people. I knew what they were thinking. I knew when they were hiding things.
Yeah.
I could, even at the Grateful Dead, I could tell that Bob Weir was really insecure. And if he hit a bad note, his whole demeanor would change and he would like back up to the back of the stage. And
Right.
then he would come back up again. And I was like, Bob Weir is insecure? And he would look at Jerry, like Jerry was God, which he was. But like, you know, and I remember seeing all these people and I'm like, oh my God, they're all insecure. Everyone is so insecure. And I remember seeing that kind of thing. And then I could still see it afterward when I wasn't taking LSD, but it was
Hmm.
just like an opening and
Yeah.
then I could see it all the time and I could read minds and I started taking classes in psychic development and stuff like that, but I was always into it.
Yeah. Where I was going with it is I was wondering if there was a sense that you knew stuff about these people who were not as kind to you as Mr. Severance and the other guy that you had, the other teacher that you
Maris.
had, Maris,
Maris.
Maris, Mr. Maris, yes.
My father was really the one that I analyzed the most, right? Because he was kind of vicious, okay? He would call us names,
Okay.
and I mean, he was a joker, so he teased us all the time. But he was tough minded. I remember once I said, Dad, I get it now. You're just like your mother. And
Mm,
he like, we were driving and he like pulled over to the side of the road and he turned around and yelled at me in the back seat, like, don't say it, like I really hit a nerve. And then when I would say stuff like that to him and he would say, don't psychoanalyze me. But I totally did psychoanalyze him. And
right.
I knew what his problem was. His father died when he was a kid, and his brother died the same year, got run over by a car.
Oh,
And left
wow.
him with and then his sister left. So he was suddenly alone with my grandmother, who was very
Yeah.
German. And
Okay.
he was just a kid. And I think it just ruined him.
Yeah.
And it broke him. And then he went into the Navy, and they were going to get killed in Japan. He didn't. They didn't make it there. They bombed Japan with a nuke. But so I did psychoanalyze him. And I knew like if he's that way, that's just no, he's not the only one. Bullies, bullies are insecure.
Yeah, for sure.
But I didn't know that men were romantic or loving, until I had that first boyfriend. I thought they were just all mean.
Mm.
Boys and men, they don't have feelings.
It's an interesting dichotomy that you're bringing up uh, uh, about the boyfriend in terms of the fact that he was kind, he was loving, he was into you, but you also described him as a wimp and that he couldn't stand up to you.
Yeah, right. So that was my mistake. He was more like my mom, and then I would waffle between like somebody like him, and then I would go off with some asshole.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
I,
somebody that wouldn't even go out with me.
yeah. I get it.
I would be unrequitedly in love with for years.
Yeah.
And that just kept happening.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, I ended up with my father.
Gotcha.
And my therapist tells me, like, God, your description of your father sounds like your husband. Yeah, I'm not the only one that's done that.
Yeah.
He's
All
kind of
right.
like my brothers and my father all put
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
one guy.
Yeah.
It's familiar, right? It's like I wonder about myself, but I was bored when
Sure.
they were too nice. If they would
Hmm.
do anything for me and they wouldn't argue with me, then
Yeah, because that those formative years created that response within you on a nervous level to where you needed, if you didn't have that kind of feedback,
contradiction,
yeah, if you didn't have that kind of feedback coming at you, it didn't feel normal. So your nervous system was already in a state of heightened awareness of
I
what,
kind of had to have that to to oppose it
yeah, exactly.
because the rebel wouldn't have anything to do then. I have to kind of be like, fuck you, I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah,
Or else I'm too relaxed. I don't know. I don't get stuff done. I even do that to myself. So I'm kind of my own slave driver.
yeah. Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, that those are the things, and two, that's why I have these conversations because I want to look at each individual guest's early childhood development and how that formulates into where they're at today in the world and how that journey is taking place for them. If
Right.
we circle back to getting out of college and going to Manhattan and starting to get fired from these jobs,
First, I was hired,
hired and then
right?
fired.
Yeah. So first, I was hired. Like, I remember the guy that was my teacher, R.A. Cooney. I mean, I was his favorite student. It was obvious. And he would fly up to Syracuse on Fridays and teach us. And then he had his own studio. And so I'm applying for that job. And right when I'm going to apply, this guy that was in my class, but was like he was my nemesis. He was like a boring designer, but sometimes he would get the accolade. He got the
Mhm.
best designer award. And it was clear he wasn't, in my view. I was.
Yeah.
And even like one of his best friends said, he shouldn't have gotten that award. That was your award. But just because one of the teachers was pissed at me for some reason.
Mm.
And just because I was a rebel and I would say things, I would contradict them. This guy was like Mr. Go Along. And he's walking out of the office. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? And he was like, I'm applying for the job. And I remember going in and saying, what the hell is Jeff doing here? This is my job. And RA was like laughing, but he hired me. And, I did good for him for a year and a half until he couldn't afford to pay. I can't afford to pay you anymore. I'm like, what? Like, you're hardly paying me at all. Well, I lost the Burger King count. And then I would, go around applying for jobs. And these highfalutin graphic designers were like, you're really good. And then they would refer me. And so I would get these jobs, but then something would happen. They don't care. They just work your ass off until they're done with you and then you're out. And my last job was this guy. He said, I've interviewed 200 people and he hired me. And then I just remember doing all this amazing work for him. And one day we were doing a magazine design and the editors took us out to lunch at the Russian Tea Room, which is like the most expensive place in Manhattan you can have lunch. And one after the other, they were praising me for my designs, one after the other. And my boss is sitting there listening to them. No, we've never seen anything like this. This is awesome. Which he used to be the designer, right? And so the next day he calls me in the office and he's shaking and he's like, "Oh, show me those logos you're working on." And I show him and he's like shaking. And he's like, "These are very good. These are very good designs. I'm gonna have to let you go." And I'm like, "You're gonna have to let me go out of your office or you're gonna have to let me go out of my job?" Oh, well, I have to let you go out of your job. I'm like, really? Why is that? Well, you don't know how to talk to printers, and I want to go to Europe in the summers, and I need somebody that knows how to talk to printers. I'm like, you've never even brought me to a print house. You think I can't talk to a printer? Oh, no, I'm just going to have to fire you. But I'll give you 2 weeks severance, and I found you another job. And I'm like, you asshole, you're afraid I'm going to take all your clients. I didn't say that, but that's what I knew. That's the reality of the marketing world in Manhattan. It's dog eat dog, really. And so, after I left Manhattan after that, I was just like, fuck all these people. My friends are all sellouts. Oh, I'm on the 32nd floor. Oh, I spent $50 on a drink and it does like what are you talking about? And they're doing advertising for cigarettes, for alcohol, for pharmaceutical drugs, shit that kills you. Maybe saves lives, but come on. Most of it kills you and bragging about it. So I just got the hell out of there and went to Illinois.
Did you go to Chicago, Illinois,
No,
or?
I had a friend that had found the cheapest law school in the country,
Okay.
and it was at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois, 60 miles west of Chicago. So most of the kids in that college, and I'm 25, right? She's like,
Okay.
"Come here." I was like, "I'm getting fired." And she was like, "Come here and hang with us." And then I made like 3 friends in 3 years in Manhattan, and I made like 30 friends in 2 days in DeKalb. That it was the Midwest, man. It's a lot different, I'll just say. I experienced it as like heaven in comparison. And I was like there for one day. I'm walking down the street. Hey, Julia, hey, come with us that's what it was like. And plus I was from Manhattan. I was amazingly groovy in comparison, they thought, and everything I did was remarkable. I was in the paper right away for clothing that I was wearing, which was very interesting.
How did
And
that come about?
I met some people, right? I ended up having a boyfriend there for 6 years who was like the campus radical, really. And he lived in this place, and one of his roommates, she was on the staff at the paper, and she was like, "Your clothes are really cool. Can I do with like a thing where we take pictures of you in your clothes?" I'm like, "Okay, I just got my clothes in Manhattan. It's normal in Manhattan, but it's weird in DeKalb." So there was that. My friends were student activists. And here I was all angry from Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that the men that graduated were making like 32 grand a year, and my friends, girlfriends were making 16 within 3 years. They got double what we were getting.
Yeah.
And so I was pissed off and feminist and ready, ready to fight back. And they were really creative. That the DeKalb was really cool. There were artists, musicians, poets, activists, and they blended all of that together. And we'd have these parties, we called them hootenannies, and people would either sing or read poetry or rant. And
Yeah.
we raised money and we fought against the administration and won. We were winning battles against the administration. Like they were drug testing the sports kids, on scholarships.
Uh-huh.
And we fought against that and won. So they had to stop drug testing while we were there. We got them to divest from South Africa when there was apartheid in South Africa and stuff like that. Though once we really started fighting against their tuition increases, we didn't win there. We got in trouble. He got arrested, and there was a real revolutionary sociology professor, a dialectician, a Marxist humanist, and he would come to our meetings. And anytime there was some kind of a debate on what we should do or what we believed, he always had this incredible insight. He was a sociology, like critical thinking guy. And so we started doing study groups where we were reading Marxism and Hegel, like philosophy and really deep shit about how to change society. Really intense. And
Mm.
that was when we met people from all revolutions, all movements, from all periods of time, from all over the world. That was really remarkable. So that's how I became a revolutionary. I was
Okay.
going to art school. Yeah, that's where I went to grad school in DeKalb. They let
Gotcha.
me go for free. I was in school for free and learning that. So this is like 85. I started going into school there, or
Uh,
86.
uh,
So I first learned programming, like some kind of a weird, like it was called CMac. It was a program on an Apple, like an early Apple computer.
yeah.
Then we got a Macs, and so we learned how to do design. I also learned a computer guided slide programming, film, video, and all that stuff combined, and electronic sound. And then
Okay.
we combined that with performance and political activism.
Got you. And did they give you a scholarship, or did they just
Yeah, I
say,
got a scholarship.
okay,
First, I got a scholarship to teach, to teach in the computer graphics department.
okay,
And then I got free school because I got a job as a graphic designer at one of the school departments. It was called the Center for Governmental Studies. The
okay,
lady that was my boss was a historian, a Marxist historian, and we met at this coffee shop, and she was like, "Ah, you're a graphic designer? I need a graphic designer." So she was very praisey. I could do no wrong with this woman. Every design I did was worthy of immense praise. So,
and did you try to do wrong? Did you try to pull any of that out of her?
well, we did have a fight one time.
Okay, that's
We
ah,
did,
that's what I was looking for.
I said that history is subjective. That really pissed her off.
Okay,
And, but I made up for it by giving her some really high-end scotch for Christmas.
okay,
We made up again, but she would let me get away with everything. I mean, we would I would go to work, we would talk for a couple of hours about the state of life, what was computer was going on with computers or what was going on in politics at the school.
yeah,
And then I would get done the work that needed to be done in like record time. And
hmm,
then if I wanted, I could leave and go do like protest something. That was amazing. She was great. She was great. I feel bad for arguing with her about subjectivity, but history is subjective. You, there are certain things that happen, but the view of them is what gets passed down.
yeah,
But like, you can't say stuff like the Holocaust didn't exist. I didn't ever say stuff like that. But I'm sure that that's what she was reacting against when I said like history is subjective because it's not to be debated whether or not they killed 6 million Jews. But it is debated now. There are Holocaust deniers and stuff like that. There's also people who deny that the world is round.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's across the board. People will say that there isn't something when it actually is.
Yeah, it's
Um,
called gaslighting.
yeah, it's just people's thought process of what they believe and what they want to believe versus what they can actually prove to be true. Being at Northern and getting this opportunity to be on scholarship, a very different dynamic than what you experienced at Syracuse
Oh my
in
gosh. Yeah.
in terms of relative.
And in terms of expense.
Yeah, yeah. Did that start to soften some of the rebel in you in a way?
Not at all. I became a major international revolutionary Marxist humanist. I was for overthrowing capitalism. I was meeting with revolutionaries from all over the world and writing articles, philosophic, activist articles meant to inspire people to become revolutionaries. I wanted a world revolution.
Okay.
So I would say, no, I turned from a rebel into a revolutionary.
And
I
how did
thought I
that
could have an impact.
got you? And how did that play into your design mindset?
I did, in a way, the stuff I was doing at work was just basic good design. It wasn't related. It was sort of related to politics. It was governmental studies. So I was designing magazines on things about like government and stuff like that and how I don't know, how government changes but, and my boss was a revolutionary, really, a revolutionary historian. But I was trying to mix art, but I was a media artist at that time, like at school, right? So we're doing film, video,
Yeah.
slide programming. And so I was weaving philosophic principles into the art that I was creating, and they had a performance component, so we had people coming. And I was trying to get across some pretty heady stuff. One quote from a philosopher, Raya Dunayevskaya, who was a Ukrainian Jew who had founded this Marxist humanist philosophy, really, which really goes against all other Marxism, just by the way. So it's like nobody really understands Marx, is what I discovered. People just don't understand. Marx was a humanist. They try to say he was a determinist and that, Stalin and what they did in Russia has anything to do with Marx whatsoever, which it has nothing to do with Marx or China or anything that exists. That no society has been created that has that vision of human creativity and human power, which is its own end, that kind of thing. But one of my favorite quotes from Raya Dunayevskaya is creativity is not just a great artist, but when masses in motion so uproot the old that a whole new continent of thought is born. And I would put that stuff like that in my slides going by and stuff like that. People are like, I don't know if I really, my teacher, he was like a media guy. And we used to have all these really deep conversations, but at a certain point, he just couldn't follow it. And so I did what was called a defense of my, let's say my senior or my last year, my MFA defense. And it was called Creativity and the Idea of Freedom. And I was following out like how Mao, like there were all these artists in China who were revolutionary artists, and Mao like jailed them and stuff like that. And how I was talking about how socialist realism is not freedom, and it's not even revolutionary. It's propaganda. And so I was looking at what's propaganda and what is freedom. And I also looked at what they do to kids and how in even that, if we go back to second grade and like Sarah's bunny is better. there's this sense of discouragement from, and I was making the point that everyone is creative, that it's naturally human to be creative, and that trying to compare people or saying one person's better than another person is what destroys the natural creativity of children. And painting teachers, I don't know if I talked about my painting teacher in that one, but like teachers who will tell you that you're not very good just because they're insecure about their own abilities, that destroys the natural creativity that is ours as humans,
Yeah.
and and our ability to create on the level of creating a new society where everyone is free, and that they want to repress that level of creativity because they don't want us to be free. And I did figure out for me why I would want a new society is so everyone could be free to be self-expressed. That everyone would have the freedom to spend their life being self-expressed rather than just being like a cog in the wheel.
And as you come to the end of that MFA journey, what is your mindset at that point in time of where you're going to go and what are you going to do once you get finished?
It started getting messed up because racism started being the topic that we were addressing, and that freaks white people out. So you have all these radical white kids who suddenly turned against us when we started talking about racism.
Wait, I'm confused. Uh, And the reason I'm saying I'm confused is that because I'm in Detroit.
Right.
So you're in DeKalb, Illinois, which
Which
is
is very white. Okay. So they have like kids coming in from Chicago, black kids, into something called the Chance program.
okay.
But there's this one counselor named Martha Palmer, and she was the favorite counselor of all these kids because she actually supported these kids. And she noticed there was a revolving door policy. A lot of 80% attrition. 80% of these kids would leave.
Okay.
But the school got money from the government for letting them come in. So she said it was a policy on the part of the administration. And when we were protesting the tuition hikes, we asked her to speak, and she said, I'm going to speak and I'm going to talk about the attrition rate, but they're going to fire me. And I had a boyfriend at the time who said, if they fire you, Martha, I'm going to go to the president of the university and stand on his desk and demand that you get rehired. But they did fire her
Mm.
for speaking out at our rally. And we shut down the highway. I mean, it was, people got arrested. It was a radical thing. And there were black students that suddenly started working with us, and we were the radical white students. And suddenly you got these kind of revolutionary white students and black students coming together. Administration hated that. All sorts of kids got fired from their jobs and stuff. Black kids were getting threatened, but they fired their best counselor. So there was definitely a movement happened. And a lot of the kids inside, we had created this group called the John Lennon Society. It was very creative, right? I said poetry, music, art, politics. So the John Lennon Society. And some of the kids in the John Lennon Society started turning against us viciously. Viciously. Like this one guy was a cartoonist and started making cartoons of me looking really like a fat, and there was one kid that made me into a rat. That he drew rats. Everyone was a rat, but I was like a fat rat, but you could tell it was me because I had octagonal glasses. And they just did vicious stuff about us and turned on us and they called the cops on us and shit. And so that was towards the end, like I'm about to graduate. And here I am graduating and I'm gonna put my hand out to the provost of the university to shake my hand, and he puts his hand out and I go like this. No, I'm not going to shake your hand, you asshole. You fired Martha Palmer, you're racist. And so, yeah, I was angry. But I had this great job. What ended up happening though is that I actually had this boyfriend that was like, let's sell t-shirts at Grateful Dead concerts. And and at the same time, our revolutionary organization in Chicago that we had joined was asking us to move to San Francisco, to Oakland, to help build their Oakland, whatever we called it, local, we called it. So we were selling t-shirts at Grateful Dead concerts. I quit my job at the university. We moved to Oakland, California,
Okay.
and I became an entrepreneur. We sold more, we made more money in one concert than I'd make in a whole week. And it was a concert.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, this is better. It was stressful because we were guerrilla marketers, really. You weren't supposed to be really. They say, oh, it was like open freedom, at Grateful Dead concerts. It really wasn't. We were doing copyright infringing t-shirts. Really
Okay.
good ones.
Okay.
Really good ones.
And how does that play into the ethical mindset of being a designer, working in the magazine world where everything is copywritten as you're producing it? All the writers that are submitting works are, it's being protected by the
Well, let me just say
magazine.
this, because there's something that happened to my dad that totally changed my view about copyright.
Okay.
He had a product. It was like a thing for a coffee maker, the replacement carafe.
Uh-huh.
And he designed it so that it would fit like all these different coffee makers. They would come with these glass carafes and then they would break and you'd have to replace them. So he got a replacement carafe. This was the best thing he ever came up with. And he was kind of an inventor kind of guy. And not everything worked, but that worked, except for this catalog company in Canada stole his design and started selling it. So he was selling through this catalog and then they stole his design, even though it was copyright protected.
But it was another country.
I think it was in another country, but it didn't matter.
You said it was
There
a
was a
Canadian
lawsuit, a big lawsuit, and he
Canadian company. Yeah.
had to settle. They had more lawyers and they sued. I mean, he sued them, but they had more lawyers, they had more money, and they ended up settling, and he just ended up being able to pay off his lawyers and had to go bankrupt.
Okay.
And so I realized, a copyright is completely pointless unless you have the money to defend it. That is
Yeah.
just a fact. And then I also had people stealing some of my designs, but they were other activists, and we were doing buttons for political stuff, and people were stealing my stuff. And even on Dead Tour. Now, there was a guy who did Calvin and Hobbes. He didn't copyright protect his own cartoons. He refused to
Okay.
copyright protect his own cartoons. So we did a lot of Calvin and Hobbes stuff with lyrics from Grateful Dead concerts. Those did well. but we did stuff that you couldn't even do legally. We tried to do it legally, but they wouldn't let us.
Who wouldn't?
If the Grateful Dead wouldn't let us.
Okay.
So we said, hey, we want to design Grateful Dead t-shirts, and yeah, you can do it, but you can't sell them at concerts. And we were just like, okay, we won't do it legally then. They also required all sorts of insurance and stuff. And so we did the best one, the biggest seller we ever had was combining the Bulls and the Dead, which they now have legally. They figured it out, I guess, eventually. But we had one and we called it Great Bull Dead World Champs. And this is when there was Michael Jordan. And we made $12,000 in one weekend selling these shirts. And this is in 93 or something like that. So whatever that is now, that's like $25,000 in today's, in a weekend. So yeah, we were doing copyright infringing designs, but I didn't have a problem with it. They
Okay.
wouldn't let us do it for real anyway. So we were rebels.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was stealing something from somebody like a kid, like another person. I didn't look at somebody else who was selling on the lot and say, I'm going to copy your t-shirt. Though people did that. One of my friends did that to me. Took my design that I came up with based on Calvin and Hobbes and he knew that that shirt sold well, and he bought some shirts from me, got the silk screens and made his own without telling me. That I would find that's different in my view than the Grateful Dead who are millionaires using their logo on a shirt.
Got you.
I
Can
can
you?
make a few $1,000. It's not, I'm not hurting them in any way.
Okay, so it's not about the theft. It's about whether or not you're hurting somebody.
It's not quite theft because if you look at what the Grateful Dead designs were, like their artists, they were using art from like the Day of the Dead. They were using, it's basically like folk music. Now, you want to say that Bob Dylan stole the music from Woody Guthrie or all the black people that were doing their folk music? Or is it part of a folk music tradition? I mean, you can debate this stuff. I'm pretty good at debating it.
Okay.
But the art that the Grateful Dead were using, it was derived from other folk traditions. And so we were just continuing the folk tradition of that art. It's just that they decided to copyright stuff. And even the Grateful Dead, there's a guy, Stanley Mouse, who did the Skull and Roses, which was derived from Day of the Dead Skull and Roses. But they were stealing, I mean, they were putting his artwork on tickets and not paying him. My husband actually, before I knew him, defended Stanley Mouse and won. Had to sue the Grateful Dead for the use of the art. That is stealing, okay? When you hire an artist to do something for you and then you use the art without paying them, that is stealing. When you create something that is derived from a folk art tradition, I don't consider that stealing. I consider
Okay.
that a development of the same tradition that birthed it.
Sure. When did you get to the point in your creative journey and career? Did you start to shift into presenting and working with other individuals and to try and convey to them to be authentic and allow that to be the thing that moves them forward?
Jerry Garcia died. Okay, so that was the end of that whole thing. We weren't going to do t-shirts on tour anymore. And I, one, like the boyfriend that I had, he started doing, well, we had broken up, but he started doing website design and asked me to do websites for him, design websites that he was programming. And I was like, websites? So I created my own website in like early 97 and I started cold calling around. And I noticed like one of the first people that I cold called was a feminist astrologer. And I was an astrologer, back in the way day. Being a feminist and an astrologer, that's kind of unique because feminists don't like astrologers and astrologers don't like feminists. I mean, they don't usually get along. And so I wanted to talk to her. And I was really fascinated by her, and we did a website for her. And it was natural for me. I also took Landmark Forum. The Landmark Forum changed me a lot. So I was like 38 years old. Here I come in like being angry, revolutionary feminist, but I also thought the world was against me. And when I took the Landmark Forum, I realized that I was creating my own reality in a lot of ways. It was difficult to get through some of the like, well, what about actual real people who are oppressed? But still, there is a sense of we are creating the reality that we're living in. And one of the big things in Landmark is authenticity. That's probably where I got that word. And I was working with people, I was like, you want to be yourself. And then I started getting into law of attraction. Law of attraction says like attracts like. If you're and what you seek is seeking you, which is a Rumi quote, but that's basically law of attraction. So if what you seek is seeking you, that target marketing isn't really where it's at. And it's not about targeting people and convincing them to do something. It's about being recognizable as who they're seeking. And to be recognizable as who they're seeking, you have to be authentic. Well, that was how I figured it out anyway. And so all of the work that I did from like 98 on was mostly, I would call them now soul-led entrepreneurs. I called them spiritual entrepreneurs, or they were people who were highly creative and doing their own thing, more so than political activists. The group I was in split in the late 90s. The revolutionaries, they
Hmm.
couldn't even get along with each other. And, it was a lot of race that split that one up too, by the way. Um,
Okay.
Race is a really divisive thing in this country. White people are fucked up, excuse my French, but they don't like black people. And you can see it right now. Anyone brown, you're out. We'll send you to Guatemala. But, I started seeing that there were contradictions inside of the activist world. And I also saw in Landmark that they were able to create revolutionaries in a weekend. If you get off your shit, you automatically want to help other people. You want to help other people. If you don't have that stuff like, oh, something happened to me and that's why I'm this way. And if you get over all of that stuff and you free yourself of those limitations, suddenly you're available to actually be of service to humankind. And I saw it over and over again. And so I kind of decided that was more effective. Being authentic and kind was more effective than arguing with people about how they should change the way they think. You actually can't change the way people think, is what I discovered. I mean, that's these transformational workshops were the closest thing I ever saw to changing, but they had so many rules. Landmark, I don't know if you're familiar with it. Have you ever done the Landmark Forum?
No,
Do you have friends that did and try to get you in?
no, I've never even heard of it.
Oh, wow. There was a thing in the early 80s called EST. There was a guy named Werner Erhard. He started it.
Okay,
And there's a lot of viewpoints about it, but transformation is really, I mean, it's about distinguishing between your story and the reality and seeing that you made up a story about it and that you can make up a different story, one that's more inspiring to you and calls you into doing good things in the world. Put it that way. That's like a shortening of it.
okay,
But I consider that before and after. Before and after Julia. In fact, I was Julie before that, really. And then I was Julia after. The more that I got into marketing, internet marketing, the more I see how they're no different than those people in New York. They want to brainwash you into buying shit from them. They don't care how it gets done. For the most part, they're willing to lie to their customers. I find that abhorrent. And that always pisses me off. But I've also made almost a career of checking them out and seeing how they do it. And, I go to their things, they invite me. I see behind the scenes. Like one of my pet peeves is something that's called cart reopen. And that's where they do all the hundreds, thousands of people are being told, buy this thing, and you only have until Tuesday to get it. Cart's closing at midnight. You have to buy this now, whether you're ready or not. And there's a lot of group, like kind of like Kids R Us on Black Friday, or whatever. Toys R
yeah,
Us, right? Yeah, they're like killing each other to get to this Cabbage Patch Kid or whatever. So it's like that. And then they close the cart, and then 2 days later they reopen it. But they say something like, well, a lot of people still want it in, and we changed we lowered the pay plan to just 97 a month and blah blah like that. And Alexa, stop. And it I was like, wonder if they're lying or if they really are, people were really asking and this and that. And when I got to be partners, joint venture partners, affiliate marketing partners with these folks, they tell you as a partner in advance, they're going to be cart closed on Tuesday and there's going to be a cart reopen on Thursday. And here's the emails that you send out. And the emails say, we decided, as if we just decided. And I'm like, so you're having dozens of partners send emails out to their people saying, basically lying to them, lying to their customers. That just really freaks me out. I'll call you back. That kind of stuff really irks me. And so I'm willing to say the opposite of whatever they say in public. A lot of things that they say, I don't think are true. Just even how you're supposed to run a business or how you succeed at marketing and things like that. I'm really into people being independent and free and having their own economy, creating their
mhm,
own economy. If I can't change that we're a capitalist country, at least I can help people to make their own way and not have some boss that's going to fire you or whatever. And so I think authenticity is the opposite of what these folks are really about. And I
And
think once now that we're in the robot age, standing out, it'll make you stand out if you're honest. It's really throws people for a loop. And if you're authentic, which is a vulnerable thing to be, it's like you're revealing the truth about you. You're not trying to pretend that you have your shit together at all times and always have for your entire life. I make some eight figures, or whatever. Whatever, listen to me kind of thing.
and how does that uh, present to the clients that you have in terms of what you try to encourage them to do the most?
What has really come to me in the past 5 years is that coming back around to that it's natural for us to be creative as humans. Many of my clients naturally came to me having multiple abilities. And so I've been doing websites since 97. People would come to me and say, well, I'm a Reiki healer. I also do astrology and something else. I'm an artist. And do I need three different websites? I want to show my art, I want to talk about the Reiki, and I want to talk about the astrology. And so I would say, I think not. I think we can come up with a way to unite all those things cohesively because you're the one that learned all those things. And so there's something at the core of you that had you learn those things to begin with. And I would ask them, like, why did you learn that? Why is that important to you? When did you notice that you learned that? When did you notice that you could read people's health by looking at them? When did you notice that? How did you express that as a kid? Similar to what you're doing here,
Yeah.
right? When did you notice that you could read people's bodies? When you were 6? Well, yeah, actually, I had invisible friends or whatever, right? And they would tell me things, but then my parents told me I was crazy or tried to put me away, so I stopped. I would hear these stories. And me personally, like I said, I wanted to be a writer and an artist and a counselor when I was in high school, but I had to choose one. And even then, they make you choose again. So you can't just be an artist, you have to major in something. Graphic design can't be graphic design and photography or painting. It's graphic design. That's it. And you can even be graphic design and illustration. It's just graphic design. And so I I had like these like I wish like somebody would pay me to just talk to them on the phone. I remember that. Like just like a counselor. I wish that somebody would hire me to do writing. That would be great. And people did eventually. And I started, but I had this kind of feeling, oh, I wish. Who really was impressive to me was Peter Jackson, who did the Lord of the Rings movies. And so he got all this people together. It was amazing what he did. He got the original Tolkien artists. He got writers who had been reading The Lord of the Rings every year for 30 years or whatever. He had all the best musicians, artists, writers, actors. I mean, it was amazing. And I thought, why can't I be like Peter Jackson and use all of my talents? And then, like one time I was whining to as my spiritual coach, Derek Rydell, and I was saying, Derek, I want to be a painter. I want to be a singer. I want to be my own, entrepreneur. I want to be a designer. I want to be an actor. I want to be a writer. I'm writing novels. I just don't know which one I'm supposed to do. And he said, well, but you're a Renaissance woman. You're supposed to do all of them. And that just, I melted in that moment. And he goes, I know, because I'm a Renaissance man. And I was like, holy shit, I know this. All of my people are Renaissance people, and they're meant to combine all of their talents to have a greater impact and solve all the age-old problems that have been facing humanity since the dawn of time. And that by trying to niche the thing down into one thing, we're stupefying our creativity. And they can't do it anyways. They're going to quit rather than trying to find a niche. And I've met a lot of people that were like, I was just ready to quit. And then I heard you say, forget everything you ever learned about marketing. Start from nothing and ask your soul what you really is important to you and don't niche. And so I came up with something because I do messaging for people. I help them come up with their message. And I help them come up with a unifying principle, something that's a principle that they have that unifies everything that they do, and then turn that into a world-changing message. And a world-changing message is a message that when you say it, it changes people. Even saying you don't have to niche in this environment changes people. So they come to me and they say, well, you said you don't have to niche. And I said, you don't have to niche. Come up with a world-changing message and attract people that are aligned with you on the soul level. They'll love everything that you do. You can be an artist, you can be a writer, you can do design, you can be a coach, transformational coach, you can be a healer, you can be all those things. They just like you because of who you are and how authentic you are and you say who you are. So that there's no bullshit. So
Right.
many people are bullshitters, right? They say they're this, and then you get to know them and you're like, you're not that at all. Everyone has contradictions. You can try to point out my contradictions, you have, but I'm going to be honest about it. I'm not going to lie to you. But people are willing to just lie to your face in order to make themselves, quote, look better. And so if you're not willing to lie to somebody's face, that's sort of a moralistic alignment that I have with that person, right? And I find them to be rare, not willing to lie. But they can't. So all my clients, they can't lie. They just can't do it. Even cart reopen, they can't do that level of lie. They just can't do it. I can't try to niche myself down into this tiny little box for you. It just feels wrong to me. I can't try to hype myself up and tell you that I'm something that I'm not because it just doesn't feel right. I'll tell you what I really am and what I can do for you. But I'm not going to try to hype myself up into something so that you'll pay me. It's shocking to me how, reasonably cool people are willing to just lie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's few and far between that you have the ethical mindset come into play.
In
Uh,
marketing, especially,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
in entrepreneurship. It's like they'll do anything. There's this one guy, I'm not going to mention names, but he had all of the most popular internet marketers supporting his launches. And he had all these highfalutin types, I call them, come to this meeting. And one of my friends was at this meeting. And she was German and she was like, "Oh, Julia, don't worship these people." She was like telling me what they were saying. And one of the things this guy said was, yeah, you can charge $1,000 an hour for coaching, for business coaching, and you can find a coach to do it for you for $50 an hour. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, fuck you. That is so capitalistic. What is wrong with you? And I wasn't there, but my friend was there saying that. What? You want to pay them $50 and charge 1,000? Like, isn't there like a disconnect for the client for one, that you're charging $1,000? And then here's this coach, you're only giving them $50? Don't question me, I make more money than you. What? Don't question me? And that guy's a healer. And, always signs everything with all the love in my heart.
Yeah. When you came up with the name for your current business, the Magical Marketer, what was the inspiration for that came about?
Back in um back in 98, two things happened. I took that landmark forum and realized I was creating my reality, and I took a manifesting course. And I learned that how you focus changes reality. So that you write down things that you want and they happen. And it took me a long time before I was going to share that with my clients because I was really worried they thought I was crazy or whatever. So even though I had some clients that I was going to tell about it, but I wasn't like putting it out as my primary marketing message until I met this woman. She wrote this book called Attracting Perfect Customers: The Power of Strategic Synchronicity. Her name is Jan Stringer now. Her name was Jan Brognias then. But this book, The
Okay.
Power of Strategic Synchronicity, that is the power of planning to have synchronicities arrive. And she did this attraction plan, the strategic attraction plan. And I started using this thing. And you ask questions like, what are the qualities, characteristics, and attributes of my perfect customers? And you write these things down, and I swear the person behind you in the grocery store starts talking like the person you wrote that you wanted to attract. It was like magic. So I knew about manifesting, but it was like a couple of like 4 years, 3 years until I found that from when I took the manifesting course. So I was doing manifesting a little bit on my own, but then I found, wow, this woman's doing it with salespeople in Texas and it's working. So I was like, whoa. And then I started taking her classes, and then finally she did a certification. So 2006, I got certified as a strategic attraction coach. And that's when I started calling myself the magical marketer. Because it was like if I can do a beautiful design for anyone, but if you're still thinking badly, you're not going to succeed. And so you need to change your thinking at the same time as you're creating a new website. And I started having people do the attraction plan first thing. I started giving it away as a freebie on my website almost 20 years ago. And I still do. If you go to my website, you'll get this, I call it the Soul Tribe Attraction Playbook now. But yeah, I started doing that. There was one thing that kind of turned it all around. One of the questions in the attraction plan is what do I want my perfect customers to expect from me? And just that word expect, I was like, ugh, I don't want them to expect. Stop. I know. What do you expect? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then I realized, wait, what if I designed their expectation? That's different. Okay, what if I want them to expect that we're going to do the attraction plan? And everyone that I attract expects that we're going to do the attraction plan. That's a totally different feeling than they're going to resist it and say, what the hell are you doing? You want me to do what? You crazy person? And this is before The Secret came out. When the movie The Secret came out, millions of people were doing Law of Attraction all of a sudden. Before that, it was weird. It was right before that I got certified. But so I just started calling myself the magical marketer and putting it out there that the way you think about your marketing changes how you attract clients.
And
So
that becomes the magic.
that's the magic part. Yeah, that's the
Excellent.
magic part. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think that would be a great place for us to end on that note for today. And one of the things that I always want to remind the audience at the end of each episode is to listen to your heart, but also be kind to your mind.
Yeah.